Welcome back. Well, we have some breaking news to bring you now. And the New York Times is reporting that Donald Trump has been indicted by a Manhattan grand jury after a probe into hush money paid to porn star Stormy Daniels. That would make him the first former US president to face criminal charges, even as he makes another run for the White House. Well, let's get reaction to that now, because my panel are still here with me. The MP and Foreign Affairs Committee Chair, Alicia Cairns, and the independent peer, Lord Ian Austin. I mean, both. Alicia, this was news that we had thought may well have been coming on Tuesday. We had expected something to happen, but now we hear the full details of this. And of course, it relates to a payment, something that's been called a hush money payment to Stormy Daniels. She is an adult film actress and director, and she said she received money in exchange for keeping quiet about a sexual encounter that she had with Trump in 2006. How big a deal is this indictment, do you think?
Well, I don't think it's been kept that quiet, but I think we were talking about it during the break. And the frustrating thing is it doesn't seem to matter what President Trump does. Somehow his backers have this blind love, affection, support for him that almost they celebrate his law-breaking. So I think it'll be really interesting to see what happens now. But I have to say, in terms of the process, like everyone else, I'll be following it. I'm not an expert in the American legal system, but I think it does matter, you know, and it's history.
Well, I mean, Ian Austin, President Trump, who has said that he will run for re-election, he had said previously that he would continue campaigning as the Republican Party's nomination for the nomination, of course, even if he was charged with a crime. He's the first president to have been former or sitting US president to have ever faced criminal charges. I mean, how realistic is it that he can keep going at this now?
I'm sure he will. I mean, this is a guy who, I mean, he will use this and present himself as a victim. He'll say it's all a plot by, you know, the left, by the Democrats. He'll say they're trying to prevent him from standing. He will use populists the world over, always present themselves as victims so that they can whip up, you know, support from the public. And look, he famously said once, didn't he, that he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and it would make no difference to his supporters.
Yeah.
So I'm sure he'll just carry on regardless. He'll sail through. He's immune to this stuff. Yeah. He has no, you know, he's not worried about, I mean, the sorts of things he's done. Any sort of reasonable politician or decent person would sort of hide themselves away in shame. But, you know, he just carries on regardless.
I mean, Alicia, that point there about, you know, there's nothing that Donald Trump could do to dent the support that he has. It's a serious point, isn't it? Because Ron DeSantis, who is, you know, the man that people had largely seen as a more credible version of Donald Trump, he had a huge amount of momentum building up over the last couple of months. You know, there was a fascinating interview at a rally recently where there were people who were Republicans wearing DeSantis T-shirts who were saying, oh, no, I'm still supportive of Trump. It just seems like whatever he does, he has this rump of real solid political support that is unshakable.
Absolutely, and we should be worried about this. We shouldn't be in a situation where voters are celebrating the fact they want to back someone because they too are a lawbreaker. We shouldn't be looking up to people in public service, in public life and going, do you know what, he breaks the law and so do I, so I'm going to vote for him. Yeah. And it does really worry me, the narrative you see. I mean, at one of Trump's rallies a few weeks ago, they said that somebody introducing Trump was talking about how I didn't agree to give my money to Ukraine and to that homosexual Zelensky. I mean, this is just a whole other world, and we have to be really careful not to import the American style of politics into our country.
Yeah. And Ian, I want to come to you on that point because, you know, there have been some very big questions over Donald Trump's role in the Capitol riots and about how much he incited people to behave in the way that they did. How worried should we be that something like this will only fuel that rhetoric that we've seen from him, which is that it's an establishment attack, it's a planned plot to try and stop me from running for president, rise up against it, because we've seen him using language like that already.
That's exactly what's going to happen. That is exactly what he'll do. And he's someone who doesn't abide by normal standards or decent behaviour. Look at the things he said about women. Look at the things he said about, you know, about other countries, about immigrants, about his praise for Putin. I mean, this is a guy who, you know, is clearly unfit, in my view, to be president of the US, one of the most powerful positions in the world, the leader of the free world. But the Americans voted for him. It's a polarised society. He whips up his base. The more other Republicans in the race, the better it is for him. He won last time because it was a crowded field, and he could set himself apart from all of them. So I'm pretty Who would bet against Trump getting the nomination? Who would bet against that?
Yeah.
I will, with hope and fingers crossed.
Well, I hope he doesn't, but I'm not sure I'd bet against it.
And Alicia, what do you think the reaction to this will be from politicians here in Westminster? I mean, how can the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, really react to this, do you think?
Look,
Ian,
it's
you're shaking your head.
It's a legal process. I don't think there's much that they can do. The reality is we have a very positive relationship with the Biden government, and the US-UK relationship is incredibly precious. But that is stretched, I think, to its extreme when you have President Trump in control. But, you know, politicians will have to be reasonably careful what they say.
Yeah, I mean, there's some... Donald Trump, and we were talking about what he's likely to do now, whether he's likely to try and use this. I mean, Donald Trump has been reported recently, a couple of hours ago, that he'd suggested his supporters give their political opponents a war if he was indicted. He reposted right-wing columnist Wayne Allen Root on Truth Social, of course, because he's no longer on Twitter, and included a link to a column that he'd written entitled "Democrats want to indict and arrest President Trump. They want a war. Let's give it to them." Ian.
So irresponsible, so dangerous. I mean, this is a society and a country that's full of guns. You know, that's awash with guns, and it only takes one lunatic, one extremist, or one sort of person with mental health issues or whatever, to pick up a gun and create carnage. And the guy's totally irresponsible. He doesn't care what happens. Look what happened at the Capitol.
Yeah.
I mean, what a disaster. You know.
Well, Alicia, I mean, Trump's lawyer in the last few moments has said that she was informed of the former president's indictment. As we said at the start of this conversation, I mean, it was something that they expected to happen. We know that Donald Trump has long thought that this was something that was likely to come his way. I suppose the question now is, do we think that it will knock his Republican campaign off course, or do we believe that he just continues in this vein?
I think, unfortunately, it will consolidate his base. He will argue that the Manhattan elite, out of touch, captured by foreign states, is trying to make sure that he is held back from making Britain great again. And I think, unfortunately, it will give him more petrol to his campaign. Yeah. But the reality is, if he is guilty of a crime, he has to be held to account.
Yeah. Well, he is, of course, the subject of 3 other separate criminal investigations. And, of course, we will bring everybody far more on that story over the coming days when we find out more.